Actually, yes, this is a good reminder. I'd forgotten about this guy. And if you're not familiar with him, this Jesus ben Ananias, he was a farmer or some just random commoner in Jerusalem around 66 AD, so just before the war broke out, who spent day and night walking around with nothing else to say except prophesying the coming destruction. And he would say, a voice from the east, a voice from the west, a voice from the four winds, a voice against Jerusalem and the sanctuary, a voice against the bride and the bridegroom, a voice against all the people. And Josephus says he went around all the streets, all the alleyways, day and night with nothing but that to say, until he was arrested by the Romans, or rather the leading citizens, Josephus says, in Jerusalem, took him and handed him over to the Romans, who flayed him to the bone. To the bone. And in a strange sort of way, similar to the other Jesus that we're more familiar with, he apparently didn't cry for mercy, didn't shed a tear, and took the beating with nothing else to say except woe to Jerusalem. The flaying, the gouging just made him change his prophecy, his warning to woe to Jerusalem. They thought he was mental, complete madman, because when they asked him why he says this, where he gets his message, whatever, all he said was woe to Jerusalem. He would not reply or say anything else. So they released him, thinking he was just a bit, in the head, and off he went. And for 7 years? Yeah, just had a quick look. 7 years, 5 months, he just went around the same as before, just saying woe to Jerusalem. If people gave him food, that's all he'd respond with. If people shouted at him, that's all he'd respond with. So you get the message. He's woe to Jerusalem. And Josephus says that all that time, his strength didn't flag, his voice never went. They assumed he was under some sort of supernatural impulse, which is what made people a bit worried about his constant doom and gloom messages. Apparently, he only got his rest, as Josephus says, when he actually saw the siege being laid against Jerusalem, and his message was proven true, and he now saw the fruits of that coming to pass. And he had one last message from when he went up onto the city walls, and he said, "Woe once more to the city and to the people and temple," and then finished with, "and woe also to me." And then a catapult flung a massive rock which squished him, and he died. And that was that. So that is a little interesting tidbit of the history concerning the Jewish war, the destruction of Jerusalem and the temple. And yeah, a strange sort of warning beforehand from this man, also oddly called Jesus. I mean, it may have been a common name at the time, but I find the sort of parallels intriguing. And yeah, it's curious, that's for sure. And there's a lot more curious things that happened in this time leading up to the war and during it, which I will go into soon. I'm going to do a few more on the rapture because it sort of ties into all this. And then I'll move on to looking at the Jewish war and all the oddities that happen there. Like this guy is one of them, and there's plenty more, so stay tuned.